What is going on, everyone? Welcome into our next top 10 positional breakdown video. Today we're going to be talking about a really exciting running back class. We're going to get right into it, but before we do, if you could just take a second and hit that like button down below. It is a free and easy way to really support my channel in a big way. It tells YouTube you enjoy the video and to push it out to other NFL fans just like you. It really helps me out. Also, if you're new here or if you haven't yet already, do make sure you're subscribed. We've got plenty more positional breakdowns coming. We're going to be doing corners, linebackers. Every position group really is the goal as we lead up to the draft. And you can join me on this quest for 100,000 subscribers. We're closing in, baby. Let's get started with my number 10 running back in the 2023 NFL Draft. And it's someone who was a backup last year. I know, crazy, but he was backing up. Shocker, the number one running back in this class. We're going to bookend this video, Texas to Texas, with Roshan Johnson out of Texas. And Roshan, with the transfer rules the way they are right now, probably could have transferred, right? He could have gone somewhere where they had an opportunity for a starting running back to come in. He could have gotten 200 plus carries, 1,500 yards, and maybe he would have helped his draft stock by a round. But even then, I'm not entirely sure, because I think what he showed NFL teams, not just that he's loyal and wants to finish the job, which I think means something, but more importantly, he showed how high his floor can be as a backup running back. And I know that's not super exciting, and he has a ceiling about him, but just think about what you're getting the second you draft Roshan Johnson in the third or fourth round. You're getting a guy who has proven that he's willing to come in on short yardage situations, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, and is a monster in those situations. Honestly, the ideal back, because he's big enough to consistently have defenders bounce off of him. In fact, his missed tackle rate was almost the exact same as Bijan Robinson. Forced 45 missed tackles on 98 carries. I think that's actually a higher rate. Obviously a smaller sample size, but he has a stubborn refusal to go down on first contact. But he's not so big that he lacks acceleration. So he's got good vision and he's got good burst into the hole, which really makes him the ideal short yardage back. And we saw, Haskins out of Michigan going like the 3rd round to be that for the Titans last year. Roshan's a better player than Haskins was. And the other thing he showed is that he'll do the dirty work in pass protection. I honestly think he, from the 17 players I've evaluated so far, is the best pass protecting back. So you're talking about a guy that as a floor can come in and be that short yardage guy. He can pass protect on 3rd down. And honestly, is perfect if you're a team that has, a Saquon Barkley or a Nick Chubb or whoever that feature back may be. Roshan can do exactly what he did at Texas. He can give you 90 carries, 100 carries, and do that dirty work. Reduce the physical burden that guy you got to pay that you want to keep healthy for the playoffs. Reduce the physical burden and injury risk on your starter. And he's a really effective player in certain spots. Now, I don't want to say that he doesn't have upside. Like I said, he could have transferred away, gotten 1,500 yards in, and shown, look, that missed tackle rate that I talked about earlier, you crank up the sample size, it doesn't matter. He's going to keep doing that and be a really high-end runner. And, I still think he has some physical limitations. He's not the fastest guy. He's not the quickest guy. Honestly, there's going to be more powerful runners at the next level in terms of being elite in that regard. But my comparison for him is D'Onta Foreman, who came out of Texas as a 3rd-round pick, entered the league as a backup, as most mid-round guys do, and then as Derrick Henry got hurt, he showed he can carry a workload. In Carolina, as Christian McCaffrey got traded away, he showed he can handle the workload and be a starter. But even both of those teams decided we're okay letting him go eventually, maybe as a replacement level starter. But he has starting upside nonetheless. So no, the total yardage isn't there, but the film is damn good. He's not a horrible athlete for a bigger back, and I just think you're getting a remarkably high floor player and is the perfect guy to pick if, like I said, you have a feature back in front of him. And it's that floor that makes him my number 10 running back, even if there are other runners in this class that have higher upside, in my opinion. All right, number 9, Israel Abanikanda out of Pittsburgh. And, he's a little bit more scheme specific if he's going to be a good starter in the NFL. And my comparison for him is Jeff Wilson, who has now established himself over the years as a starting guy. And in a league where there's all these Shanahan wide zone style offenses, where they're looking for backs with enough speed to win to the edge and have that threat of home run hitting ability, and to pair that speed with really good vision and decisiveness and ability to see cutbacks when they're there. And Abanikanda, just like a guy like Jeff Wilson, has the ideal skill set for those types of blocking schemes. So if you're a team like Chicago or San Francisco or Tennessee or whoever it may be who runs a lot of wide zone blocking and run schemes, he's going to plug in as a quality backup right away and a potential starter just like a Jeff Wilson. Now, I really love this comp, and I'm going to keep coming back to Jeff Wilson here because he's not the most powerful player. He's got kind of an even weight distribution, and that sounds like a good thing, but honestly, at least my preference, I want running backs to at least have 60% of their play strength in their lower half, if not more, because it gives you that ability to really get low, run behind your pads, and push piles and push defenders as a power runner. But not just that, it gives you more contact balance and ability to shrug off potential tacklers in space. And with Abanikanda, he just doesn't really do that. He's got a really low missed tackle forced rate. He's going to go down on first contact more often than not. He's not going to run through defenders and be a true power runner. No, he wins with speed and with vision and kind of one-cut slashing ability. And like I said, in a well-blocked offense, he's going to be able to produce just as he did for Pittsburgh. But as far as creativity and giving you production when it's not really there to be had, I just don't think he stacks up with a lot of the guys in this class. And then it is worth noting with him, like, he's just really underdeveloped in the receiving game. He showed really good flashes in that department. But I do think some of that lack of sort of stop-start ability with him is something that potentially holds him back in terms of route running and fluidly transitioning after the catch in the receiving game. He's also just not a good pass protector. So there's signs that he can be a decent receiving back, but similar to a Jeff Wilson, doesn't necessarily thrive in that department. So literally one of the more accurate comps I think we're going to have in these positional rankings for Israel Abanikanda. And then before we get to my number 8 back, there's going to be players that you want to hear me talk about that don't make this list of running backs. It's a really good, deep class. And I want to let you know you can get access to my full running back rankings and my rankings at every position group on my Patreon. That is patreon.com/thatfranchiseguy. We've got 17 running backs fully evaluated, written up, and ranked at the moment. We've got tons of other players and other positions as well. We're going to have up to 350 plus players when all is said and done leading up to April's draft. Not just that, you will get access to exclusive content, things like film breakdowns, and we're going to be starting up team-specific 7-round mock drafts for all 32 teams come April. So if you enjoy my draft content, you want to get even more of it, and you want to support my channel as well, I literally would not be able to do this without my amazing supporters on Patreon. Check it out. It's patreon.com/thatfranchiseguy. And let's get back to my number 8 running back. It's going to be Sean Tucker out of Syracuse. And Tucker is going to be our jack of all trades, master of none drop for this list of running backs. I mean, really, just a balanced back across the board, whether you're talking about athleticism, being balanced and good, not great, being well distributed, his skill set across the board, he's kind of solid to good at everything, or just literally his contact balance just might be his best trait. He has that low center of gravity, and if you can't wrap him up, if you're only getting an arm tackle or you're trying to dive at his feet, he's going to force you to brush off of him and keep going and force broken tackles there. So, man, I think he can play any scheme. Like I said, I think in terms of athleticism, he's just good across the board. He's got solid speed to win angles and have breakaway runs, but he's not a dynamic speedster. He's got good hip fluidity, good change of direction, rapid feet, but not elite feet in terms of agility and shiftiness and creativity to make guys miss in space. I think when it comes to power, he can fight for tough yardage. He can run through defenders if they're not too big, but he doesn't have incredible size either. In the receiving game, he's pretty good. He actually showed some really good flashes. He was a little bit underutilized, perhaps, in that department at Syracuse with room to grow, and pass protection as well. A lot of whiffs, a lot of misses in terms of technique and awareness, but the willingness and size to hold up there is solid. So I think you're getting an immediate backup, a high floor player that, if given the opportunity, can come in and do a little bit of anything for you and give you a potential starter. So that's a, mid-round running back. We see a lot of these guys that are just really good, balanced players that carve out nice careers in the NFL. I think Sean Tucker is next in line in a long line of good, balanced, contact balance style running backs, but probably never going to be an elite, high-end, even ideal starter, because at some point, there's so many good running backs in the NFL, the great ones all have something dominant about them, and I just don't know what that's going to be for Sean Tucker at the next level. There is one last note on him that I will say is he's a little bit too bounce heavy. A lot of his highlights are with that nice kind of jump cut that he uses to accelerate to the corner, and because he isn't an elite athlete, there is a chance that that style of running is much less effective for him in the NFL, where you've got these dominant linebackers and safeties and slot corners who are going to be able to contain those bounces much better. So there are lots of signs of good vision for him, but from a decision-making perspective, he can be a little bit bouncy, which perhaps dings his eval a little bit. But let's get to number 7 here. It's going to be Chase Brown out of Illinois, who completely burst onto the scene here in his 5th year. Now, he is a 5th-year senior, but he is only 22 years old. He came out of Canada, ended up at Western Michigan his first year, and it took him a little bit of time at Illinois to really become their full-time starter. But here in 2022, again, his 5th year, my goodness, he was insane. He burst onto the scene just as I described. He accounted for about 40% of Illinois' offensive production, almost 2,000 total yards, about 1,700 on the ground, about 13 touchdowns, and I don't know where Illinois would have been without him. And on top of that, he, just like his brother, who's a safety at Illinois, is one of the best athletes among anybody we're going to talk about on this list. So you might be wondering, well, he's listed at decent size, about 5'10", 210. He's got great speed on tape and ran a 4.42 at the combine, produced like crazy. What's the holdup with him? And there are a couple of deficiencies in his game. Number one for me is the vision. I really think he has the worst vision out of anyone here on this top 10 list. I saw so many plays where there were cutback opportunities, there were open lanes that he didn't see open. He didn't have the reaction time to hit them. He didn't press the line of scrimmage on inside zone. I think there's still so much for him to learn in terms of reading out blocks and understanding the concept and where he needs to run. The other thing is he just doesn't have much of a power profile. I know his size is solid, but he doesn't play like a 5'10", 210-pound back, which is actually pretty good NFL size. He, kind of like Abanikande, has that even body distribution. He doesn't have a lot of power in his lower half, and it really shows in his case where he's going to go down on first contact more often than not. He just doesn't have great contact balance, and he certainly isn't running through tackles and fighting for tough yardage. He's not going to be a great short yardage, reliable back in those types of situations. So you pair those things together, and I really felt like I was watching Miles Sanders at Penn State just a couple years ago, who was a really nice athlete, similar size and body distribution. But there were some of those drawbacks with Miles Sanders. And even in the NFL, it took him a while to really be a full-time starter. And let's face it, Miles Sanders is a really good player. I think he was awesome in Philadelphia, and he's going to do good things in Carolina, who also have good blocking. But Miles Sanders was protected a lot by getting to play behind the best offensive line in football last year with a running quarterback in Philadelphia. So some of those deficiencies were sheltered a little bit. But I'm not trying to slander Chase Brown either. I think, like Miles Sanders, Chase Brown, in the right situation, can be a really productive running back and a dynamic playmaker with long speed. In fact, I would love to see him go to Philadelphia, where I think he could fill right back in very seamlessly. So he's got that dynamic athleticism. He's really creative on the second level, He's got good instincts and shiftiness to make guys miss. He forced a lot of missed tackles at Illinois, and that's where a lot of his production came from, was getting into the second level thanks to his speed and then making guys miss and taking a lot of runs to the house. He's also pretty good in the receiving game. He runs good routes. Still growing in that department, but I think he's got good upside as a receiving back. He was a willing pass protector with room to grow there as well. So he has 3-down back potential. You also just kind of want to know what you're getting, though. You're getting a guy that might not make the most of well-blocked runs because he might not, see the lane that he's supposed to hit sometimes. And you're getting a guy that doesn't have a huge power profile. But when he sees it, it's exciting. All right, then my number 6 running back here is Dwayne McBride out of UAB. Such an explosive player. And, he's explosive because a lot of it, like with his vision and his instincts and his just kind of natural, I guess instincts is the right word for it. He isn't just really fluid and good at making guys miss at the point of attack, but he, maybe more than any back in this class, sets guys up really well. He kind of runs towards pursuing defenders to set up bad angles and then quickly changes direction the other way and just has a really good feel for doing that. And that's how you see all these explosive runs from him, even though I don't think he's the fastest guy. Now, he's coming off a hamstring injury and didn't run at the combine. I think his pro day is going to be a really big one, and unfortunately it hasn't happened yet as of this video. I could actually see Dwayne McBride, if he surprises me and runs in like the 4.4s, he could jump up to being maybe even as high as RB3. I mean, he is a really talented back, but that would be a major surprise. I think he's a good, not great athlete. I think he'd probably run like a 4.56. I think he has good acceleration, but it's not elite. I think he is a little bit high-hipped, and he can make guys miss and change directions with that jump cut. But as far as stop-start ability, it's not anything insane. But he has good, probably not great acceleration through the hall. Maybe needs like an extra half a step there. And man, he is just really fluid in terms of a jump cut, which he can use to change lanes in the inside zone run game, but also to make guys miss in space. And you want to talk about contact balance, man, this guy plays low to the earth. At times, he's that rolling bowling ball of needles, and he's just a really tough player to bring down in space. So all that said, I feel very confident that he's going to be an effective runner, and I think his upside's pretty good to be kind of a middle of the pack starter, like a top 16 guy or so. In fact, my comparison for him is J.K. Dobbins, who I see a lot of similarities to. I think J.K. might be a little bit faster, but again, we'll see what Dwayne McBride ends up running at his pro day, ultimately, if he can go. A couple things for him to really work on. Number one is ball security. He's got 9 fumbles in his last 2 seasons. Just holds the ball high and loose, and it paints an easy target for safeties and linebackers to pop that thing out. The other thing is he's just entirely underdeveloped as a receiving back. I don't know the exact number, but I think he had like 7 catches or something his last year. They just didn't really ask him to do that, so it's an unknown. But again, I don't think he's this remarkably fluid route runner or anything like that. So there's room to improve and show a little bit more there. Obviously, he's talented with the ball in his hands, so there's upside there. But the pass blocking as well just wasn't great when he was out there, and something he wasn't asked to do a ton of, and certainly didn't do it at a high level. So there are things to improve upon for him, and maybe it takes a little bit for him to prove himself and earn that starting opportunity. But I do see him as a mid-round guy, 3rd round, 4th round, and in the right fit could be someone like this year's Dameon Pierce, who just really surprises people, has that big rookie season, and maybe even becomes a feature back. like early in his career. He's just a really instinctive player that knows what he's doing at the running back position. And he can resort to power too. Like, he is not a slender player. He's willing to fight for tough yardage as well, which some of these other backs you may or may not be able to say that about. Especially this next guy here. My number 5 running back is Devonta Chain out of Texas A&M, and he's going to be a favorite for the Madden players out there. But I honestly don't know quite how well his skill set's going to translate to the next level. A really polarizing running back prospect. I've seen him, people have him as high as number 2 running back in this class. I've seen him, closer to 10. And I think that explains his range of outcomes. I mean, honestly, you're talking about a 5 foot, 8.5 running back, 188 pounds, really does not have a power profile about him. There's no way around it. He's going to go down in first contact. He's not going to run through a lot of tackles. And if you draft him, you got to know that that's the deal. But he has legitimately elite speed. And if he can go to a system, maybe in Philadelphia where there's a ton of space, or Miami where they can tap into his speed, if he can get with a coordinator that can utilize that trait, it's going to be special. And the other thing with him is there's just not a lot of comps for Chain and his skill set in the NFL. Chris Johnson came to my mind, but Chris Johnson was a lot bigger than Devonta Chain. He's not quite like Tariq Cohen or Darren Sproles or a true scat back because he doesn't have great change of direction ability. He's a one-track mind. If he was moving slower, I'm sure he could be fluid and agile, but he wants to get to that top speed for good reason, right? And when you're going that fast, it's really hard to stop and start and take time to make guys miss. So, man, he just has a very specific skill set. It's a very valuable skill set, but there's no one in the NFL really demonstrating it. I mean, Tony Pollard comes to mind, but Tony Pollard's a lot bigger, right? Pollard has the size to run through arm tackles much more consistently. So I think he's a little bit more boom or bust, Devonta Chain. But the one thing I will add here is that he does have good vision. I think even though he moves really fast, he's able to pick the right lane. And that's easier said than done when he also has really good first step acceleration into the hole. So for him to see blocks setting up well in advance so that he's pretty consistently picking the right lane, he sees cutbacks on the fly as well. I think that is really impressive. And if you're talking about putting him in an inside or an outside zone scheme, I think that will translate. So I'm not trying to dunk on Devonta Chain. I think he's really got a high upside at the next level, and that's not really shocking considering he ran a 4.32 or whatever it is, and the speed shows on tape. But there is a lot of risk potential that the speed just isn't, the relative difference between college players and the NFL, that the speed isn't something you can win alone with, and that size really holds him back. But there's a world where he goes to the right fit, and he can be something like this year's Isaiah Pacheco, where you give him an open system and space to run from, and he's not Isaiah Pacheco. They're very different players, but you get the point. Like, there is a world where he really bursts on the scene, and his speed is something that teams really struggle to handle. So I'm just very curious to see where he lands, how he's used, and how this works out, because he could be kind of a trailblazer for this archetype of running back that I honestly just don't believe exists in the NFL with anyone I could come up with. And then my number 4 running back certainly doesn't have the high upside of a Devonta Chain, but his floor is almost as good as anyone in this class. It's Zach Charbonnet out of UCLA. More and more I watched him, the more and more I'm like, yeah, I mean, this guy is probably a starter in the league, if not day one, very, very soon. It just kind of depends where he goes. But if you're sitting there, 3rd round, and you don't have a starter, he's your guy, man. I compare him to Damian Harris, who was a 3rd round pick. Just a no-nonsense north and south runner with good athletic tools and good size. I mean, he's just so consistent. He's got really good vision, elite ball security, just doesn't put the ball on the turf. I think he showed pretty good speed on tape, comes out, runs a 4.54, which is a really good time for him. He's got great acceleration into the hole as well. So he's able to pick the right lane and he hits it really hard. He's got good power with his size. He's a tenacious runner. He's going to pick up short yardage situations. He's going to, make guys at the second level brush off of him. Now, he's not the most agile guy. He's not going to change lanes with dynamism and make a million guys miss with juke moves and spin moves. He's got a little bit of that in there, but that's just not really his game. Another comp that I just love here, Damian Harris, who's been honestly a good starter for the New England Patriots. And likewise, he's a pretty good pass protector with room to grow there, but a functional player in the receiving game as well. He's got decent hands, decent routes. You can throw him a screen pass, and he's going to make a lot out of it. So I really like Zach Charbonnet's floor. He's not as exciting as Devonta Chain or even some of these other guys we've talked about in this class. He's not as exciting as some of these other running backs that rank outside the top 10 that you can read about on my Patreon. But yeah, I think he's such a high floor player. You know exactly what you're getting and could start day one if you asked him to. Then my number 3 back is a really fast riser in the pre-draft process here, Taijae Spears out of Tulane. A lot of people were talking about him before the Senior Bowl, just like, oh, this guy's pretty explosive. Keep an eye on him down there in Mobile. He might steal the show, and that's exactly what he did in both phases of the game. The receiving game, where he was just working linebackers in the one-on-one drills, but explosive runs in team as well. But once you load up the tape, you don't even need the Senior Bowl to see how explosive and talented this guy is. And I tweeted out that his size reminds me a lot of Austin Eckler, and I think what he does in the receiving game can be comparable there. But from a stylistic perspective and really what I think he can be at the next level, Aaron Jones is a very common comp for Taijae Spears, and I agree with that as well. Just the way he runs is very similar. He's just smooth and has a good patience and an ability to make that first guy miss. He can put on a stiff arm. He'll juke you. He'll spin around you. He's not an elite athlete. He's just a great athlete, if that makes sense. Like, we're not talking about Saquon Barkley, and I don't even know if he has like any elite physical tools. It certainly shows up in some of his jump cuts and some of the elusiveness and springiness that he has at times. And I don't mean to obsess about player comps here, but talking about a guy like Aaron Jones, who's, kind of maxed out as like the 8th best running back in the NFL. He's not the biggest guy. He's got really nice speed, but he's not the fastest running back in the NFL. And I think that's very much in line with Taijae Spears. I think he could become a top 10 or so running back in the NFL, but I'm just not sure if he can be like a top 5 elite guy, so to speak. But yeah, I think he's a really sound back. He's exciting. A lot of people like him for good reason. I've got him climbing up into the day 2 of the draft now and can be a day 1 starter. And I think he has 3-down potential as well, just like Aaron Jones. All right, number 2 is Jamir Gibbs out of Alabama. And ironically, I have a low-end Aaron Jones comp for Jamir Gibbs. Similar size there, just under 5'10", 200 pounds as well. So very similar build to Aaron Jones. But honestly, I think you can even swing higher as far as upside projection for Jamir Gibbs, and that is Jamal Charles. And I think it was actually C4 that first saw that, so shout out to C4 on YouTube. I saw that on Twitter as a good high upside potential projection for Jamir Gibbs. But dynamism for Jamir Gibbs. He has speed, he has acceleration, foot speed, and change of direction. All ideal, excellent to elite across the board. Now, he does not have a power profile. In fact, I even saw Devonta Chain run through more tackles than I did with Jamir Gibbs. At that size, it's just not going to be a part of his game. But I will say his stop-start ability is significantly better than Devonta Chain. I think his shiftiness, his instincts, his creativity at the next level is better than a guy like Chain. So they're not all that similar in terms of play style to me. I also think Jamir Gibbs, that fluidity shows up so much better in the receiving game, where he's a dominant route runner. You can line him up as a slot receiver on 3rd down if you want to do that. He can make guys miss in the receiving game and be a screen threat there. I think his vision is certainly good enough. I didn't, see any remarkable reads from him necessarily, but there weren't any moments really where I was like, you're going the wrong way, dude. So I really like his game. I could see him sneaking in to the back end of the first round if the fit was there, but he's not going to last long in round 2. I mean, he's overshadowed by Bijan Robinson, but Jamir Gibbs would be RB1 in a lot of running back classes, and I think he can be a dynamic potential all-pro in the right fit. So there's your number 2. And then number 1, it's Bijan, and we could spend an hour raving about Bijan and talking about the laundry list of traits that he is remarkable at. Or we could spend 10 seconds and just point out that this is the highest grade I've ever given a player. Saquon, when Saquon came out, I had a different grading scale. I think Saquon would have been very close, but I will say Saquon had at least one question mark, and that was with his vision. I don't have that on Bijan Robinson. I think Bijan has truly elite vision, not just in terms of do you pick the right lane, do you hit openings when they're there, but the defense seems to be moving in slow motion for him, not just with his athletic ability, but the way he's processing, the way blocks set up, and the way he manipulates angles. This dude forced over 100 missed tackles in 2022. That's absurd. That's basically every time he touches the ball, someone's going to miss. And that takes me to his athletic ability, where he doesn't have elite speed. It's the one thing that holds him back from getting an 8.0 grade for me, which is literally the perfect prospect, which I doubt I will ever give to a player. But his 0 to 60 acceleration is phenomenal. His just foot speed and agility, that jump cut, the juke, is truly elite. His change of direction, natural hip fluidity to stop and start and, wiggle around, he can do that. You want to talk about power? He's got it. Now, he's not like the most powerful back that's ever come out of college, but at 215 pounds, he's low to the earth. Not to mention, he's got elite contact balance. This is what I'm saying. You can go on and on and on and on about Bijan. Just watch him play, man. We all agree this guy is ridiculous. And he's going to be like the number 1 pick in Dynasty rookie drafts easily. He's going to be the most valuable number 1 pick in Dynasty League like formats if you want to talk some fantasy football. And he's probably going to be a first-round pick if he goes to a good landing spot in redraft formats. That 87 impact grade, I think he's going to be a borderline top 5 to 10 running back the second he gets drafted. And you don't say that about any player at any position. It's just absurd how good of a prospect Bijan is. My face lights up talking about him. We didn't even talk about his receiving ability, where he runs great routes. He didn't drop a pass in 2022. I don't do this very often and compare players to Hall of Famers, but he's LaDainian Tomlinson. Very similar size, similar athletic profile. Both Texas guys. Watch some LT highlights and watch some Bijan highlights. They're the same freaking guy. And I am not the guy that drops ridiculous, generational player, Hall of Fame comps. I don't know the last time I've done this, if I've ever done this, but LaDainian Tomlinson is in this draft. And honestly, I think, I have consistently mocked him in the top 10 of my mock drafts, and I would surely do that. I think he's almost underrated based on where he's going in mock drafts and the fact that, I just think first-round running backs obviously don't have a lot of value, but if you're getting LaDainian Tomlinson, who's going to always make the first guy miss, that's a little bit different, don't you think? Especially when he's a great receiving back as well. So, Bijan's ridiculous. He's the best player in this class. If you think otherwise, I don't get what your grading system is, because he's almost the perfect prospect. So there's your top 10 running backs rankings. I really hope you guys enjoyed. Again, if you want to know my thoughts on the 17 running backs I've evaluated, we'll have over 30 probably by the time the draft rolls around. or my rankings at other positions, do check out my Patreon. It's patreon.com/thatfranchiseguy. You'll support my channel in the process. If not, at least hit that like button. You can check out my merchandise store as well. We've got the It's Draft Season hoodies now available. That link is in the description below. Make sure you're subscribed up. And thank you for watching. We'll see you guys on Monday for our next mock draft. Peace out.